It's the 27th of April, and I think we're into about week 6, something like that, since lockdown began. And we're out on our morning dog walk, of course, and it's a dog walk with a difference today because it's raining. Beautiful spring rain. And interestingly, it's been another tough week. I had a couple of really low days in the last week or so where I'd say my mood was really low. I'm feeling okay, feeling alright about things today. Had some difficulties in my family. We have my extended family have suffered from some loss of life due to the virus, and it's a really strange experience to accept that attendance at the funeral will be remote. We'll be watching a recording, which brings an element of real surrealness, and I'm sure that's going to have quite an impact when it happens. And I have friends, close friends, who are suffering, who have very close relatives who are suffering as we speak. And I'm really seeing the impact of this on my neighbour, who's an intensive care nurse, working night shifts. I do the odd bit of shopping for her, and when our paths cross, I can see what a strain this is, and I wonder, and I'm kind of praying for her well-being and her physical health. And so, really difficult times, and the kind of clamour of impatience and negativity and blame that I experience when I go anywhere near media, I'm finding it harder and harder to tolerate. And I've been thinking a lot about what patience means. Again, I've come back to this idea of patience, and I think patience is the kind of what we need to practice in that gap of uncertainty, when what we could do and what our instinct and what our reflexes, what our brains tell us to do, is fill the yawning gap with stories. We mine our past, and we assess our current situation, and we project a path of the future, and we start to tell ourselves stories about what's going to happen. And in part that's because it's important for us to be able to plan. Of course it is, if we have people that we care for and we need to protect ourselves, we want to plan for the future. But the challenge with patience is not locking ourselves into a story and then walking straight into that story, especially if that isn't necessarily the right story for us, or a good story for us, or having a positive ending. And my husband and I, in fact, my husband has brought to me a number of conversations about our future, and I touched on that a bit last week, and the anxiety of the longer term for us, more so than the immediate. And I've been thinking a lot about how to accept and consider in a planful and mindful and conscious way the different stories and the different paths the future might take, and how we prepare ourselves for different eventualities, good and bad, against the need for patience and caution around giving myself a narrative, giving my mind a story to repeat over and over again about what the future might bring, which is undoubtedly going to have an impact on how I deal with now, because I'll bring myself into a place of negativity quite quickly. My very special friend Caroline Griffiths, talks a lot about stories and knows a lot about stories, and working alongside her I've learned a lot about the power of the stories that we tell ourselves. And I'm re-evaluating a lot of the stories that I had been telling myself about who I am, what success means to me, my business, my future, how I'm going to build myself out, how I'm going to make myself financially secure and retain that security, and what all that means to me. And I've been looking at some of those stories and thinking about what stories I'm telling myself at the moment. And I think the less control we have over circumstances, and the more external factors play into how we can plan for the future, and we have to relinquish control to other people, the bigger that yawning gap is, and so the more patience is required. And it takes a lot of conscious thought. There has to be conscious choice, there has to be conscious communication with ourselves, with other people. This is really difficult stuff, and if you're not in the practice and the habit of doing it, it can be really, really challenging and really tiring. And it's brought back to me just how much I believe in conscious leadership and whole leadership, and my experiences in working with organisations and with clients, that every single time it's a whole human being, and the challenges at work and the challenges of leadership and the challenges of managing a team and the challenges of organisational change come back every single time to the types of stories we tell ourselves, the limiting beliefs that we have, and our own projections of the future that we create for ourselves. And we still have an opportunity to create a future as a whole planet, as a whole global population, as a member of a small community, as a member of the country, and as a member of our families, and as a member of our workplaces. And I think another week of patience is ahead of me this week, and that's just fine. That's just what I'm going to concentrate on while I get the work done. I hope everybody out there is staying well, and it's going to be so awesome to reconnect when we can. Stay well and stay safe, and be mindful of the stories you're telling yourself.